Hey, so recently I posted a video about answering the call in March 2023, but I just surrendered in September 2025. And some of you may say, like, how did you answer the call to ministry, but you didn't quite surrender? How did you do that? And let me explain this. Um, in answering the call, the reason for me, the true reason for me answering the call to ministry, for those who know me, and some of y'all can hop in the comments. For those who know me, like I really live my life the way that I say I live my life. Like I really live my life this way, and living my life this way. Not that I get everything right, because God's still working on me too, but I really try my best to strive to live my life according to God's will. Now, even for those people that's on the outside, some people may not even know that I'm an actual minister. But one thing that I do know that they can say, or that they may say, is that they can see that it's something different about me, or the light that's within me, because sometimes you just have to show up for people, and you just showing up and letting your light, the light that's within you, radiate, in them. And then if a conversation happened to come up, or however, then then you might take the conversation into, God, but that doesn't mean, for those who know, God, that's my man right there. But to get back to the message, though, the reason why I answered the call is because um my mom would say, here and there, and God forbid that anything happens to my mom anytime soon. Yes, Pastor Dicey, we need you here for a very long time, But one thing my mom would say is, if anything happened to her, that, you know, the what the Bible is really instilled in her children. So if anything happened to her, any of us could really preach her funeral. So this is what my mom, God forbid now, but this is what my mom would say. So because of that, I said, okay, I already know that, the way times, not even times are down, 10 to 1, you would need to be a minister, most likely, because, 10 to 1, this, depending on how she would want to have her funeral, then we probably would be in a church if that's what she decided. But so 10 to 1, we probably would need to be a minister in order to speak over her, other than sharing reflections. You know what I mean? So I said, you know what? Yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna say yes. I'm gonna say yes. So then that way I can have, my license, so that if that time happened to come, then I could possibly, do my mom's eulogy, to do her the funeral or whatever, right? God forbid now, but I would be, if that's what she wanted, you know what I mean? At least one of us would have, the paperwork in order to do that. So I'm saying this to say, and let me say, the way I live my life is the way I live my life. So even without a license, I live my life according to God's will. That's what I try to do. That's what I strive to do. So even without a license, that's what I try to do. You know what I mean? But that was my reason. So that reasoning was really my own agenda. You know, it really wasn't, and let me say this though. Now, in regards to whatever mission that my pastor had, yeah, I'm gonna submit to the mission, because, just like when you go into a job, when you go into a job, you might have rules and regulations. So you be like, okay, I'm gonna abide by the rules and regulations. You sign a paper and put the date. So that's how it is. Like a lot of times when you go into jobs and things of that nature. So yeah, okay. Look at, my pastor's mission. Yes, I will submit to the mission. You know what I mean? But I still yet had my own agenda. You know what I mean? I had my own agenda. But even in my agenda, and like I said, in being a minister, like, I know that God has walked with me from childhood. So like I said, I recently posted. Y'all can go back and look at some of those videos I just recently posted. You'll be able to see what my child says, that particular child says about, my son says about me, how I live my life behind closed doors, because they see me, they know, and me giving the experience of me coming into, my relationship with God and Jesus. So in saying that, God has been walking with me for years, way before I even um, came to the church that I'm in now. He's been walking with me. You know what I mean? I am keen with the Holy Spirit with God. Like, I can hear God, like God when he speaks. And I don't mean he out there. So he don't speak to me like he trying to tell me what's going on with y'all, what's going to go on tomorrow or something like that. No, we not there. But he, sometimes there are warnings deposited in my spirit. You know what I mean? So that's where we are at this time. Although I did just recently go through a little shift. So yeah, I got to see what this chapter going to be like. But he do this positive stuff in my spirit at certain times. You know what I mean? And it's like with urgency, like you better say what I said say. You know what I mean? So that is the part right there. You better say what I said say. That was the part I didn't fully surrender to. That part right there. Say what I said. That, because I ain't even gonna lie. I was like, God, you gonna send me an Aaron? Like Moses, like, can you send me, like, you sure my brother or sister can't do it for me? You know what I mean? Not because I care what the people say, but I'm not trying to be responsible if y'all don't listen. That's my thing. I'm not trying to be responsible if the people don't listen. So, granted, I don't look at it as everybody will listen, of course, because everybody is not in tune to the spirit. Everybody is not in tune to what it is that God is saying. You know what I mean? Everybody don't have an ear for God. You know what I mean? But there are some that y'all got an ear. So he's letting y'all know. For me, I don't know why he got to give it to me. Like I got to be the one that that have to give the warners. I want to give the prosperity messages. You know what I mean? I want to be like rainbows, butterflies. Tomorrow you get a car. You get a car. You know what I mean? But no, he don't give me the you get a car messages. You know what I mean? He will have me speak in people's spirits in regards to maybe encouragement and things of that nature. But a lot of times when he does give messages, he gives it to me in a whole, and it comes as a warning. Even that warning that he's giving it to me too. So it's like, I gotta abide to what he's saying too. You know what I mean? But when you're not obedient to what he's saying. So that's the thing. So yes, I'm in ministry and things of that nature. Yes, I still have to fulfill, the things that my pastor requires because I'm under him. You know what I mean? However, but it's a little different for me because for those who know, I be at work on Sundays. However, but just like my mom, man, she be in the street. Like I pass many people in the street. I'm trying to tell you, many people in the street, and I'm sharing a message that way, so I don't, like I said, I don't know what this next chapter going to be like. I don't know what the chapters to come are going to be like, you know what I mean? But, I do know that the way God uniquely made me, how God has me, and now that we have a form of platforms and things of that nature where we can speak unto people, then who knows, maybe nations will be impacted this way. I'm not sure. Only thing I know is that I am supposed to open my mouth when God said. I don't mean that he gonna have a message every day, but when God say, I am supposed to open my mouth, and in doing that, it's sometimes hard because it's not that you want to offend anybody or anything like that. You know what I mean? Like you don't want to offend anybody, and you definitely want to make sure that you're not talking from self. You know what I mean? So I, of course I know that I spend a lot of time, in God's presence and things of that nature, but that don't mean that y'all know that, so, and to tell you the truth, it ain't even for you to know because I still gotta say what God say. Like, I still gotta say it. Now, even in that, is it in decency and order? Of course, if I'm, if you're in the midst of a conversation, of course I can't just be like, yo, God said, blah, blah, blah. I'm gonna give you a minute. You know what I mean? Hopefully if I know you, like, or I ain't even gonna lie, I'll wait patiently because guess what? If I don't be obedient, sometimes if I don't be obedient, or if God tell me to say something or do something and I don't do it, like, yo, my sleep be troubled. So listen, I'm trying to get some good sleep, because if y'all ain't hear some of them like past messages, listen, peace. I believe in peace. I want, peaceful rest and things of that nature. But, and let me say this, I'm saying all this to say that, there's no point in having your own agenda without surrendering. So that's not just in ministry, that's in your jobs. Like, because even when you go to jobs, like, sometimes we just want a job, you know what I mean? But sometimes we're getting a job and things of that nature because of our own agenda. Maybe it's to help the family, maybe it's to do blah blah blah, but yet, in going into a job, you still have to surrender to what it is that the job, requires. Not that you're not gonna, find your way in there and maybe come with your own ideas at some point, but you sort of surrender or commit to the mission, or the bylaws, or the rules and regulations, from the job. But even like I said, even in that, you still have to, we still have to make moves to make sure that, even with our agenda, you know what I mean, that in ministry or in your relationship with God, that even with the pastor say, you still got to have your own relationship. So even aside from the pastor, you still got to have your own relationship, because we not here for anything. We not here just because, God charged us to be disciples of men. He fishers of men. He charged us to be that, for those who are in Christ, But in that, you got a purpose. We all got a purpose. We not just here for nothing, Maybe he haven't gave you your purpose yet. Maybe he haven't told you. But even in that, we all have a purpose. We're here for some reason. You know what I mean? So what I'm coming on here today, just to let y'all know that, in whatever you're committing to and whatever you're signing up for, and even in whatever organizations or things that you're starting, especially for the children, okay? Especially for the children, you got to make sure that your agenda is not just focused for you, that it's focused for the people, that it's focused for the children, that it ain't for no photo ops or nothing like that. It's because you're there also to help, the youth, to help the the children, to help in regards to whatever, like I said, in regards to what you're starting and things of that nature. Don't let it just be for the money. Don't let it be just for the money. Because when it's just for the money, sometimes even though you gain increase, you still wind up empty. Maybe somebody will catch that, but you do. So make sure that we're not just moving out of not even just your agenda, but your own selfish agenda. How about that? Your own selfish agenda, like and make sure that whatever it is that you're doing, if God provided you with your purpose already, you know what I mean, make sure that your purpose is still yet aligned for God and God's kingdom. For those who are serving people, make sure that your agenda, your roles are still yet for the people. All right. So let me see. So I'm gonna do, I know my pastor talked about it the other day, the fruits of the spirit, right? Well, he talked about false prophets, but let's go. The fruits of the spirits, right? So that's in Galatians 5:22 through 23, okay? And it says, but the fruit of the spirit is love, joy, peace, long-suffering, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control, okay? And again, Galatians 5:22 to 23, but the fruit of the spirit is love, joy, peace, long-suffering, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. So when I looked at these again today, I said, you know what, God, I listen, I love people, I come with joy, peace, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, no matter what y'all think my face look like I mean, no, I'm not, that's not so, that's not so. Don't play with me though, but that's not so, I'm not mean. But when I looked at it, I said, in gentleness, you know, God in this season, you know, I know my son said recently, y'all didn't get that part of that recording, but he was like, yeah, because like when you tell people stuff like, you know, it's basically like you tell them straight, like straight for what it is, you know. So I do want God to even, you know, help me in that, to make sure that even though I'm saying what he's saying, but to also make sure that I'm saying it, you know, saying it in kindness, you know, in love and in gentleness, if he requires that. Because sometimes he get messages and he like, yo, say what I said and that's that. Like, so I gotta say what he said and that's that, whether it hurt or not, I gotta say it, you know what I mean? But I do want to ensure that, you know, that I am walking in gentleness, you know, self-control. That was one of the last things that in struggling in life, you know, in my own personal life, that was one of the last things that I definitely you know, had a time with, but you know, God is definitely, you know, like I said, I've been working on myself for years. That right there, you know, I have been able to get under, you know, control, because you got to have self-control. If you don't have self-control, you will bring your household to a ruin. But the long suffering, like, why the word gotta be so long? Like, it's like long suffering, like, woo, that's what I'm not trying to do. I'm not having no long suffering, because I ain't telling y'all what I'm supposed to tell y'all. You know what I mean? So I just wanted to jump on, you know what I mean, touch bases with y'all today, you know, for, you know, depending on which platform I posted, you know, post this on, listen, drop y'all comments down there. If y'all know me, say, yeah, like, you know, say your part. You know, you can acknowledge if I'm saying what it, you know, was so or not, you know. And if I, you know, for those who may be on YouTube or however, like, share, you know, subscribe, you know, share it with somebody you think that needs to maybe hear a message, or any of the messages that's on, you know, like my YouTube page or however. And I'm not telling you to do this because I want to be known or nothing like that. I'm telling y'all, for those who know me, they will tell you, no, I want to be in the background. I don't even want to be, you know, I don't want to be out in the forefront. I really don't, you know, but I got to do what God say do. And that's a part of my surrendering. Be in front of you guys. So all y'all have an awesome day. Have an awesome week. All right.